I'm all about, trying to find that happy medium, maybe that middle, to use the bumper music, between people who may see the world differently. But I can't make sense of this one for the life of me. This is part of a Pew Research poll that just dropped here in the last couple of days, and I want to ask you about it at 913-408-7957. And to me, it may be the most telling poll I've ever seen in my life that illustrates the moral differences that exist between political ideologies in America today. So what do you think? I mean, if you're sitting out there right now, you're driving to the office, you're having your morning coffee, and you're thinking to yourself, do you believe society is better off if people make marriage and have children a priority? I think most of us, would be able to say, yeah, of course, right? I mean, regardless of how you feel about tax rates or who should pay for whose health care or, foreign policy, I'd like to think that as a society and as a country, we can all agree that we're better off if people make marriage and having kids a priority. In many ways, it ties into what Harrison Butker said a couple of weeks back at Benedictine. He didn't say women shouldn't work, women shouldn't have jobs. He just said the most important job for any of us should be being a wife or a husband and a parent. Well, this is amazing from Pew Research. It was conducted here back in April, but it just dropped in the last couple of days. And it went viral over the weekend. So Trump supporters, 59% of Donald Trump supporters say society is better off if people make marriage and having children a priority. And frankly, I thought that was pretty low. But it was way higher than Joe Biden supporters. 19% of Joe Biden supporters say that society should prioritize marriage and having kids. For all voters, it's right at 39% of registered voters across the political aisle say that having children and a marriage should be a priority for society. If that number holds or if that number continues to dwindle, we are even more screwed than I realized. How do you have a society that is morally just if you don't view the idea of your offspring and having offspring as something that is worth pursuing? If you don't think that you're leaving a country or a society to your own children, then you're not going to do anything that is sacrificial on your end that helps the next generation. You're not going to care. Now, this is part of the selfie generation that we've created. We've created a culture in society that's all about look at me as I stare into my camera. And listen, I do that for work sometimes, so I'm guilty as charged. I get it. But still, it's part of it's not just about looking into the camera. It's about what it's done to us as individuals, where everything is about me now, what I want, what I desire, tomorrow be damned. It plays out in small ways in terms of how the American savings rate continues to plummet. And then it plays out in big ways, like our politicians not giving a rip about $35 trillion in debt because, frankly, they don't care about tomorrow. And the ones that do are afraid of losing their elections and losing their races, so they don't want to do anything about it. But if you create a society that is all about me and what I want now and not about am I creating a culture that is better tomorrow? Am I leaving my children, which is really the only legacy that you have in the world? Nothing else matters. No one's going to remember you, hundreds of years from now, unless you're one of a handful of people. The only legacy you have is your family in the end. That corporate job that you maintained for 40 years, great. They'll forget about you real fast. Hate to break it to you, but they will. So if we don't think that the most important thing that we do are hand off the country in this case and society to our kids, and then they hand that off to their kids, well, that's how we get this morally bankrupt situation we generally find ourselves in right now. How people don't really care about how they treat others. They don't care about, what they're handing off to the next generation. They don't give a damn. And that poll was very telling to me when I saw, gosh, even the Trump supporters is pretty low. I mean, I thought that might be more like 75, 80%. It's 59%. It's crazy. 59%. Now, here's what's really interesting when you dig into the numbers. The question, percentage of registered voters who say society is better off if people make marriage and having kids a priority. For whites, Trump voters, 60%. Only 17% of white Biden supporters think that marriage and having kids is a priority. But with black voters, black Biden voters, 29% of them say that marriage and having kids should be a priority for society. The black number of Biden supporters is 50% higher than it is for white Biden voters. What does that tell me? Culturally, those black voters are more conservative than are the Joe Biden white voters, which makes sense, which is why you're slowly seeing a shift in some parts of black America to Republicans. It's not happening in mass. It's not happening at a majority level, but you are seeing that shift slowly happen. And that, as I look at these numbers and I look at this poll, it makes sense. It makes all the sense in the world. So when I saw this over the weekend from Pew Research, I said, first off, my gut reaction was like, man, we're screwed. And I don't want to feel that way on a Monday morning, but I don't know how else to read that. But then the part of me said, too, how do we reverse that trend? Well, that trend gets reversed, by the way, by those of us who like focus and think that marriage and kids are the most important thing, by accomplishing it and doing it and then handing that legacy off and that importance off to the next generation. Because I hate to be grim about it, but eventually if all these people who think that having kids is meaningless and getting married is worthless and they're never going to have kids, like, to put it bluntly, eventually they're gone. You know? I mean, it's kind of what happens. Just do the math.
Takes care of itself.
Yeah, it kind of takes care of itself. So you may have to slowly rebuild a society and a country of people who value things like marriage and value things like kids and value things like family. And it may take a few generations for that to kind of work through the system, but it will eventually happen. If people who value those things accomplish those things and are able to then build that next generation with those same values and morals and hope that they don't get corrupted when they go to these get brainwashed. That's, of course, one of the potential pitfalls as we go through the current cultural climate. But if we know it's there and we know what the roadblocks are, that's at least oftentimes more than half the battle.